If you've ever played Grand Theft Auto Online, then you're likely no stranger to the Pegassi Oppressor Mark II. This vehicle is responsible for an obscene amount of controversy within the GTA Online community. Many refer to this hoverbike as a plague of toxicity that spreads throughout GTA Online, as players with oppressors can commonly be found harassing newer players. Being fed up with the endless killings, many new players will often turn to purchasing their own oppressor to seek out vengeance on anyone that they can find, thus repeating the cycle. Being that the Oppressor Mark II is an incredibly agile bike and can be equipped with homing missiles as well as its very own countermeasures, this perspective that it sours the GTA Online community isn't exactly a very difficult one to understand. Although many have argued that a vehicle like this has no place in the Grand Theft Auto universe, the math doesn't lie. And that's exactly what we're going to be using to answer the question, is the Oppressor Mark II even realistic? In order to begin analyzing the Oppressor Mark II, first we have to break it down into individual components and understand the mechanics behind each of them. Put simply, the Oppressor Mark II can be modeled as a seat strapped to a solid rocket booster strapped to a turbojet engine. Oh, and don't forget the little wings. First, let's take a look at the turbojet engine. The main power plant fitted to the Oppressor Mark II is a fairly standard turbojet engine with an afterburner. If we were to take one of these engines and cut it in half, it would likely look something like this. At the front, or the air inlet, we have a diffuser section, classically defined by the gradual increase in diameter as we move along it. The diffuser's sole purpose is to reduce the speed of the incoming air. This generally sharp speed reduction causes the pressure of the air within the system to rise, otherwise known as the ram effect. Moving through to the next section, the air then arrives at the compressor section. The compressor is responsible for drastically increasing the pressure of the air flowing through it before it reaches the combustors, where fuel is added to the airstream and ignited. This now high temperature air moves into the turbine section, where the temperature and pressure of the air drops while generating some power in the process. In a normal turbojet engine like you'd see on passenger aircraft, the air would then flow through a nozzle or outlet, where it drastically speeds up and continues to drop in pressure until it is equal to that of the atmosphere. The propulsive power of the engine is determined as a function of the difference between the inlet and outlet air speeds. Keep this in mind since this is where afterburners come in. To keep things simple, you can look at an afterburner as a ring of fire that sits at some point downstream from the turbine but before the nozzle. The already hot and fast air goes through this ring, which increases the temperatures even more, producing significantly more thrust. The excessive combustion of fuel is what results in the purple cone that you see in-game. In real life, it looks even cooler. Located on the turbojet engine are 4 exhaust nozzles that you may have noticed rotate depending on how the bike is moving. These exhaust nozzles divert exhaust gas from the turbojet engine to allow for the Oppressor Mark II to act as a vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL, aircraft. When at rest, these nozzles face downwards, allowing for the bike to float in place almost as if defying gravity. When in flight mode and accelerating forwards, these exhaust nozzles rotate in a process known as thrust vectoring to help you accelerate in the direction of interest and nowhere else. Similarly, when you decelerate the Oppressor Mark II or accelerate in the reverse direction, these nozzles can be seen rotating accordingly to provide reverse thrust. However, when on the ground, these nozzles remain pointed downwards in order to allow for the oppressor to continue floating. One of the notable real-life examples to look to for an example of VTOL in action is the Harrier jump jet. Outside of being able to angle its exhaust nozzles for reverse thrusting, the Harrier jump jet seems to be where Rockstar took inspiration for the Oppressor Mark II's VTOL system. We can see that the Harrier's exhaust nozzles and the Oppressor's exhaust nozzles are positioned very similarly to each other along the power plant. Now that we've looked at the main power plant for the Oppressor Mark II, let's take a look at the solid rocket booster, responsible for the player-controlled boost. Solid rocket boosters, or SRBs, are often used in launch vehicles for spacecraft, as they can produce a very large amount of thrust without being very complicated or expensive to build or maintain. The design for an SRB simply consists of a mixture of solid fuel and oxidizer packed into the rocket and an igniter. Once activated, the igniter begins combusting the fuel and the gas exits the rocket through a choke, producing thrust. The big downside to SRBs is the fact that once the combustion process begins, it cannot be stopped until there is no more fuel left in the rocket. This can be seen in GTA Online with how the boosting process cannot be stopped until there is no more fuel or boost left to use. When engaging flight, there are two sets of wings that extend outwards from the fairings of the Oppressor Mark II. The idea behind these is to allow for the bike to attain flight characteristics similar to that of an airplane through the generation of lift. Due to the relatively large mass of a turbojet engine and an SRB compared to the total area of the Oppressor's extended wings, it's safe to say that the Oppressor experiences an extremely high wing loading, or the ratio of the vehicle's mass to its total wing area. Wing loading is a concept that can effectively be boiled down to lower loading equals more lift, which equals a lower required speed to take flight, as well as faster turning. Inversely, a higher wing loading results in less lift, which results in a higher minimum speed and slower turns. Putting this into a real-world scenario, we can compare the flight of both a bird and a passenger jet. A passenger jet is going to obviously need to be moving significantly quicker than a bird would in order to take flight. This is because the passenger jet has an extraordinarily higher wing loading than a bird would, thanks to the much larger increase in mass compared to the area of the wings. Bringing this concept back to the Oppressor Mark II, we understand that due to their considerably larger mass, we would need to compensate with either wing area or with raw speed. Considering the low area of the wings, this means that the Oppressor needs to travel incredibly quick before being able to take flight. This creates problems, however, since the Oppressor has a top speed of approximately 110 miles per hour while in flight. So now that we have an understanding of how the Oppressor Mark II works, let's go and actually answer the question of whether the Oppressor Mark II in GTA Online is realistic or not. And well, the answer to that is a little complicated. In the realm of Grand Theft Auto, a world where bicycles have historically been able to glide endlessly by leaning backwards, and motorcycles are faster when wheeling, the thought of something like the Oppressor Mark II existing isn't actually that far out of the realm of possibility. In real life, however, I think we all know what the answer to that question is. I mean, sure, if you put aside the questionable at best aerodynamics, the lack of thermal shielding to protect the rider, and the fact that the solid rocket booster can literally refuel itself, then yeah, I suppose it would be feasible. Thank you so much for watching until the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, then please consider leaving a like or subscribing to the channel to show support. It helps immensely with growth and getting more videos out to others. Hopefully this video was able to teach you enough about the topics covered so that you can flex on someone at your next family gathering or something like that. That being said, I hope you all have a fabulous day or evening, and I'll see you in the next video.